Hello, everybody. Welcome to this impromptu one-off session for the Solstitial Full Moon. I think it might be good evening for some of you, very late good evening. Um, in this session, as you can see from the image in front of you, I'm going to talk about a little bit about sun and moon together in various different contexts. So I'll begin moving with the slides straight away. Now, a solstitial full moon, what I mean by that is that it's basically the full moon that's closest to the winter solstice. So this event is linked both to the sun and the moon at the same time. The full moon is, well, in about a minute's time, perhaps less than a minute, it'll be the full moon for the 15th of December. And then on Saturday, in 6 days' time, we'll have the summer solstice. So we have this relationship between sun and moon, between light and darkness. And there's quite a nice sort of inverse relationship here too, because the moon, which is of course the form that governs the darkness of the night, the full moon is the height of that light and the darkness, whereas with the winter solstice, the solar day, even though it's the solar day, this is the very lowest point of the light within the year. Now, in various different traditions, you'll see images of usually some kind of a middle place, which will very often have a symbolism of ascent and descent, with the sun and the moon on either side. So this is an image, this is in the cloister in Burgos Cathedral in Spain. And I'll just show you close up. So the image of crucified Christ very often has sun on one side and moon on the other. And then you could say that there's this middle path of ascent in between. And this links in with the symbolism of Christ as the ascending serpent. I've done, well, one of my lunar sessions over this year was about serpentine symbolism, so you can look that up in more detail. Now, in the Tibetan tradition, the Buddha will often have sun and moon on either side, as you can see in this image here. Now, another one is the story associated with Mithras slaying the bull. As you can see again, sun and moon on either side with a significant thing that's happening in between them. Now, Hermes will often be depicted in this way as well, and this is also part of the meaning of his Caduceus. Hermes found two serpents in conflict, and so he got a stick and separated them, but then they wound around that third element that had come in between their conflict and brought them together into reconciliation. So this symbolism of sun and moon is also very much to do with this middle place where relationship can take place. Now, another example with the similar sort of serpentine symbolism, and again with sun and moon, is in the tantric ideas in India. One serpent is the sun, the other is the moon, and together they wrap around what's called the sushumna, which is, you could say, the middle path that reconciles opposites. Now, here's a similar idea from the Chinese tradition. This is Fuxi and Nuwa, half serpent, half human, one male, one female. One holds the compasses, the other one holds the set square. And as you can see, there's the sun above and the moon below. So the reconciling of all polar opposites by finding that middle path. Now, I want to talk just briefly about the solstices, and I'll describe what I suppose happens with them in relation to our experience of the rising sun. Now, this is a website that I've taken various screenshots of. Ignore the pink line there, that's just showing an eclipse. The lines that we're looking at here are this yellow line and this orange line. So this yellow line is pointing towards the sunrise, and this is pointing towards the sunset. So you say that the sun rises and then it doesn't stay up long. It sort of sets eventually in this direction because this is the winter solstice. This is the 21st of December coming up next Saturday. So the days are short because the sun rises further southwards, as it were, and sets further southwards. Now, if we go to the next equinox, which will be in March 2025, March the 20th, then sunrise and sunset is as good as east-west. So that's where the sun rises and sets all over the world on the equinoxes. And then if we move on to the summer solstice, which is June the 21st next year, that's will be the next one. This time the sun rises very far north and then goes all the way around like so, and then sets in this direction here. So the days are much longer because the sun has got a much longer distance to travel around the sky. So that's how the solstices work in terms of sunrise and sunset points. Now, perhaps you can see there's this shaded area here that I've just now shaded in yellow. So this is the full range of those sunrise points. They all happen within here. So summer solstice, winter solstice, equinoxes in the east. And this is that range, that zone. Right, I want to talk about something else now, which is what's been happening for the past year. It's known as the major lunar standstill. And this was brought to my attention by one of my students who asked me about whether the major lunar standstill shows itself in, for instance, in the design of Wells Cathedral here in Somerset. So this sort of brought it to my attention and made me sort of look into things a bit more. And so I'll describe how the major lunar standstill works. As you can see, it's basically the lunar equivalent of the solstices in the sense that it's the most extreme northerly and southerly moonrise points. Right, so if you look at the dates here, this is the date of today, 15th of December, and this is the direction from which the moon will rise, and then it will set all the way over in that direction. Now, this is the most northerly point at this latitude where we are here. This is the most northerly point that, or where I am here, I should say, where the moon will rise from, because this is the major lunar standstill, which is where you have the most northerly rising point of the moon and the most southerly rising point. Now, in the way that the most northerly and southerly rising points of the sun occur over the course of one solar cycle, so 1 year, with this major lunar standstill that we're having at the moment, this extreme northern and southern rise of the moon occurs over the course of one lunar cycle, 1 month. So if this is what's going to happen today, this is what's going to happen in a couple of weeks' time on the 30th of December. The moonrise will be all the way down here and the moon set here. So it happens over a much quicker course of time. But having said that, this is the major lunar standstill. There is also a minor lunar standstill as well. Now, it's a similar principle. It's the idea that you have the most northerly point and the most southerly point, but this time it's the other way around. It's the least northerly point and the least southerly point that you get. And this is actually over a cycle of 18.6 years. So it's actually going to be in about another 9 and a bit years' time. If you look at the date here, this is 2034 that I've put onto the website. And this will be the most southerly rising point. So it's not as far south as what we're having at the moment. And this will be the most northerly rising point here. So this is the minor lunar standstill. And you have this fluctuation between the minor and the major. Like I say, every 9 years you'll go from one to the other. Now back to the sun and the moon again, and I want to focus on a very famous building, one that my teacher, Professor Keith Critchlow, spent a lot of time talking about and visiting and analysing. And this is another example of where you have sun and moon, because those two towers that you can see before you, both quite different in style. The one on the left is associated with the sun, and the one on the right is associated with the moon. And there are certain things said about their heights and how that relates to a relationship between the sun and the moon. But if we're looking more generally, again, you have this idea of a middle path between the sun and the moon, because of course the entrance doorways into the cathedral are in between those two towers. So you have this middle way moving eastwards. And if we think of the sun and the moon as being the forms of the day and the night, then the threshold between those two is twilight, and that is exactly when the planet Venus is visible, either as the morning star or as the evening star setting in the west. But the morning star rising in the east is, you could say, what churches, in a certain sense, what churches are orientated towards. They're orientated really towards the rising sun and the rising of the morning star, as these are symbols of the resurrected Christ. So here's an image of Chartres Cathedral. You can sort of tell this, I think this is pre-digital photography. It's got a certain warmth to it. And you can see the towers there, the sun and the moon towers, but obviously looking from the other angle in this image. Now take a close-up look at that roof, because you can see that line of the roof, which is running eastwards, as churches do. It's suggested that, well, it's long been suggested that it has a summer solstice orientation, because in fact, the orientation of Chartres, it's very far northwards. It's facing towards the eastern side of the sky, as it were, as churches do, as opposed to the western side of the sky, but it's very northeast. Now, the thing is, when you look at it on the program that I was just showing you, that website, it's not really quite right. It's, to be fair, it's not really, you can't really say it's a summer solstice orientation. It's quite close, so you can see why it's suggested possibly to be the case. But it's a little bit further north. And interestingly, it's actually completely outside of that zone of sunrise and sunset points. So remember I showed the shaded area where all the sunrises would be happening throughout the year. So it's actually just outside of the solar range. So obviously, in another sense, it's a church, it's facing east as churches do. So it does have, in a general sense, a solar orientation. But something, as far as I'm aware, this was discovered by someone who studied at the King's Foundation before I did, or VITA as it was then, Visual Islamic and Traditional Arts. He's called Lance Harding. He's an American chap. And this just sort of clicked just about, I don't know, about a week ago. It hadn't crossed my mind. I remember years ago he said that he thought Chartres was orientated towards the most northerly moonrise, which of course is the major lunar standstill that we're having now. And that is exactly, if you look at this, I mean, that is so accurate. And that's actually today. So if you look at the date on there, it's the 15th of December. So this is where the moon will be rising from today, directly in alignment with Chartres Cathedral. Now, if we think of Chartres Cathedral and who it's dedicated to, it's of course dedicated to the Mother of God. It's one of the many Notre Dame cathedrals. And so you have this lunar association with the Mother of God, with the Virgin Mary. And this naturally balances, you could say, the solar aspect of Christ. So these two very important figures, you could say, are both present within the movement eastwards between the sun and the moon towers. Right, now coming closer, well, closer to home for me, coming to England, I want to just show a form or a place in Westminster Abbey, because this is what I'm going to be focusing on the next course that I'm going to be running in February and March. Now let's move further eastwards in Westminster Abbey to this place here. So just before the high altar, you have what's known as the cosmati pavement, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. And of course, it was used for the coronation of King Charles just about a year and a half ago. Now, it has lots of really beautiful geometric patterns on it, which are in what's known as the cosmatesque style. Cosmati was the name of an Italian family of several generations that made this type of work. And this was constructed by Italian craftsmen in the sort of mid 1200s. Now, interestingly, um, according to Richard Foster, and I definitely go along with him on this one, you also have the sun and the moon on the Cosmati pavement. Now, let's just say that there's quite a multifaceted symbolism when it comes to the pavement, but that's just for this particular occasion. Let's say that in the middle you have the earth, and this, of course, is where the coronation chair sits, at the center of the earth, you could say, at the center of the four directions. Now, on either side of it, to the north and to the south, well, to the south, you have the sun, and that's very clearly the sun, because having a dot in the middle of a circle, that is the alchemical glyph for the sun. And then on the other side, you have a sevenfold polygon, a heptagon, and of course the number seven is associated with the moon through the 4 times 7 days that you have in a lunar cycle, a month, and month comes from the word moon. So again, you have this important central place between those opposites of sun and moon. And these are the sorts of ideas I'll talk about more on this course that I'm going to be running about the cosmati pavement. It'll be an online course. And yes, this gives me an opportunity to show you the details of it. I'll send this out on my mailing list, but if you're not on my mailing list, you can look up my website, tonburygeometry.com. It's not quite on the website yet. It'll be on the website um, to buy a place on the course in about 2 days' time. So look out for that if you want to join me on the course. Now, because this is what the course is going to be about, I'm going to get us to draw just a little sample of cosmatesque pattern. No particular pattern on the pavement, just a sort of cosmati-style pattern. Right, so I shall stop sharing my screen and switch on my camera. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Good to see all of you. Now, I've got to get this pattern done because I've got to carry the cross at the cathedral in about, I don't know, about an hour's time, so I better get going. Right, so I shall switch on my drawing camera. Okay. Thanks for all coming. This was a very nice, easy one to attend in terms of the time. 9 o'clock in the morning, so nice time to be working. Okay, so what I'm going to get us to draw is this, just a little sample. And these extra little bits you can take away with you and do after the session is finished. I'll show you how to do that. And if you then want to do it there and all these places, then feel free. But we'll just do a nice simple drawing in this triangle. Right, so let's and I'm going to be working on A3 paper. So the measurement that I give you will be for A3. Now I'm going to do a 5-inch radial measurement. If you only have a centimeter ruler, 12 centimeters would be fine. Right now, as you can see, because a triangle sits very high within a circle, um, if you want, put your circle as close to the bottom of the page as possible. So you might want to just do that, just do it by eye and go to the very bottom of the page because we're going to, the triangle, as I say, sits quite high inside the circle. So I've got it right down at the bottom there. Now, I am going to do my initial construction lines with a softer line and then do the final pattern lines with a much heavier line. So do bear that in mind, and I'll tell you each time whether it's a construction line or a final line. Right, let's go into the top of the page. So with the same radial measurement that you have on your compasses, just use your eye to go to the top of the circle, like so, and draw a curve within the circle, like so. Now, this eye shape that we now have, I'm going to place the point of the compasses in this intersection here. Again, just drawing an arc like so. Now I'm going to keep going. I am essentially going to just draw that six-petaled flower that you get when you divide the circle up using the radius. So I'm going to draw the same arc each time from each one of these ending points. Even though I've drawn this so many times, I never tire of it. It's a miracle, really. It does what it does. Right, I'm now going to put in three diameters, the three diameters that run through the middle of those petals. And then we have our grounds to work on. Right, now the first thing that we're going to do will be essentially a final line. So if you have another pencil that you're going to use, then pick it up now, one that will give you a darker line than all of these construction lines that we've got here. My teacher, Keith Critchlow, used to talk about the triangle as being the descending, the fixing, and then the returning. As you can see, I'm using a B pencil here to get a very strong line. When you use B pencils, careful about rubbing the ruler over them because it can smudge a bit. Right, next thing is also final line. Now I'm picking up where those diameters go through the mid-edge points of this triangle. So as you can see, there'll be one here and going to here, then a horizontal one going across. Right, the next thing that we need to draw, it is actually final line, but I'm going to just do it faintly first because I just want to make sure that it's because the difficulty with doing what we're about to do here is that we're going to use these 2 points here, but the lines we're going to draw will extend out. So there is a possibility that they can just go a little bit awry. So you need to look carefully that you're going through those 2 points. Something that can be helpful, as you can see, if this line here is running parallel with your ruler, because it should be. So I'm just doing this like this first. And in fact, I'm going to do various others in a similar manner. So as you can see, I've just put my ruler between those 2 points, between these 2 points, and between these 2 points, and that gives me all of these extensions. Now, hopefully, if you've drawn accurately, or hopefully if I've drawn accurately, let me take a look. It should be possible to do this. Ooh, that's a relief. Always a relief when you realize that you have drawn accurately. So you should be able to do that distance there should be the same as this distance here. And that just means you're working accurately. Right, now I'm going to, with my heavy line, now I'm sort of happy with those lines. I'm going to turn these into complete triangles. Like I say, do watch out that you don't, I often sort of pick my ruler up after I've drawn if I'm using a B pencil because it can be a bit smudgy. Now, before we can proceed to the next bit of detail, we need to put in a few more construction lines. Now, you see how we have this line running through, well, this triangle here. This is the one we're going to be working on. So we've got that line running through. Now, I'm going to put in similar lines running through, one like this and one like this. And we can do it by, again, make this a faint line. So this isn't final line, this is construction line, like that. Right, now watch carefully. I'm now going to put vertical lines inside these two triangles here, and I'm going to find my way to them by doing that. Now, I'm actually going to go all the way through to the bottom, because we will need this eventually. And then a similar one on this side. So two verticals. Right, now again, watch carefully. I'm now going to put in a line here, and I'm going to do that by lining up with this point here. Now, an equivalent one will need to go through here as well. So I'll line up with there. This point and this point. They're the two that I'm lining up. Right, we're now going to put two upside down triangles, one there, one there, and then from them we'll be able to derive a similar triangle up here. So these points here, I'll line up with my ruler. And this is final line, as you can see, with my strong 3B pencil. Right, now again, watch carefully at this point. I'm going to do, it's similar really to what we did a bit earlier. In fact, it's when I changed to my, um, I extended the lines and I was just a bit concerned that they're going in the right direction. I'm going to take the risk of, oh, actually, of course, no, that should be fine, yes. That will be go to there, and that will go to there. Now you'll find this vertical here gives us the starting point for this line, and then you can carry it all the way through, like so. And then I'm going to do the equivalent thing on this side. So this, I suppose, is really the same thing as what we did. larger scale with that triangle in the middle and then extending to get these three smaller triangles. So now we're doing it at smaller scale with that as the central triangle and these as the smaller ones. So when you're ready, you can put in the third line in each of these. Right, we need to do a similar thing in these areas too. So in the sense that you've got the one in the middle and then the three smaller ones. So we need to have that here, one in the middle, three smaller ones, three smaller ones. So we need to put a few more construction lines in. Now we can put these ones in straight away. A vertical here, construction line pen again, or thinner, the slimmer lines. So having put in those two verticals, I'm going to do this, lining up those 2 points. And the equivalent one here as well. Right, so to recap is what I've just done. I put in those two verticals and then that diagonal and that diagonal. So you should have three lines in these triangles. Now, next or finally for this stage is that diagonal running through like that, and this diagonal running through like this. Now, this brings us into a similar situation to what we were in up here, in the sense that we've got lines running through two of the triangles, and that last one there can just be derived from these two. So these two here have the lines running through them, like those two did, and then we can derive the final one here, and likewise in this area too. Now again, I'm going through really quite similar processes to what I've done at a larger scale earlier on in the pattern, as you'll probably recognize. can do a similar thing um, in this area. Now you'll notice that you have other lines that you can follow up here to help you see these ones. So for instance, this baseline of this triangle should be level with that. And this one should be level with the one up here. So as you get more of these done, you're given a bit of guidance, but this one in the corner here, you just have to make sure you get it accurate by eye. I mean, properly speaking, you do have the 2 points to draw between, but probably need to use your eye to make sure that your ruler is perpendicular to this axis here. Now, as you can see, the same thing is happening, but just getting smaller and smaller inside each one of these areas. So I'll go one more just in this area up here. I'll put little triangles in there. We need to put a few more construction lines in. Um, and if you want to do this to the rest of the pattern, then feel free. But I'm going to have to run to the cathedral very soon. So back to construction lines again. Maybe a line like that. A line like that. Right, so having put in those two diagonals, I'm now going to put in two verticals. I mean, this may just ring bells because it's essentially the same move as what we did earlier, but at a smaller scale. So now there's two verticals like this. And then finally, I'm going to put in this diagonal here. So one going like that, and one going like this. It's the same thing as before, but at a smaller scale. And of course, we can keep on going in indefinitely as long as you can practically draw your lines. The pattern just disappears into itself. I suppose like a fractal, that sort of idea. Now, this recording will go onto YouTube later today, so if you want to go back over the construction process with a pause button, you'll be able to do that. I'll just quickly fill in these small triangles here. And this is really how the cosmatesque style of patterning works. And it's not always triangular, it's very often triangular patterns, but there's also square patterns as well. So this is the sort of stuff that we'll do on the online course in February and March. So if you have enjoyed doing this, then do join me for more. We'll do sort of larger patterns. This is just a little sample. Right, I am going to have to say goodbye. My camera's open. Hello and goodbye. So thank you very much for joining me. It's really enjoyable to have been back again doing one of these sessions, and I'll hopefully see you for my Cosmati course, and I'll do future, one-off sessions like this now and then. I'm hopefully going to have some really good stuff in March, which will be mainly in person in Wales, but I'll give more information about that. And I've also got some courses coming up, in-person courses in March and April, as well as this online course. So more information like that. And if you want to come on to my mailing list, write to me on my website, tombregeometry.com, if you're just seeing this online or if you've got the link from someone else. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. It's been really good to see you all, and I shall hopefully see you again soon. Have a
Thank
good
you,
day.
Tom.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.